I'm Brian Staszel, and I want to talk to you today about making pitch videos. So the competition that Allison mentioned is the original inspiration for why this talk was put together, but it can be generalized to producing any kind of quality video with an emphasis on a small team and a low budget. We don't always have big budget, and I certainly don't doing stuff at the Robotics Institute. Um, Oftentimes it's me shooting things, robots um, in the field, robots in the lab. Sometimes it's the students or the faculty explaining what the robot is doing. Sometimes I have a script, sometimes I don't. But I thought I'd give you a little bit of context to sort of the world I come from, where it's usually about explaining what the robot's trying to do or what it did, how it could be potentially used in some other application. Obviously, our goal is to, train the world's best roboticists, and then have those folks go off and create robot companies, which are, it starts with humble beginnings, like classes like this one. So there's a little bit of an education focus on a lot of what I do. And I just thought I'd share a little bit of behind the scenes of like trying to make our faculty and making our students look good. And I want to help you make your stuff look good. So we'll talk about script. We'll talk about trying to use the equipment we have to get the most quality out of it. There's some common sense stuff we can do. I want you to be aware of the tools that you have access to as CMU people for free here on campus, and maybe some other tools that you might want to invest in or download and figure out. And I was going to talk about some recent work because it sort of echoes this requirement of the McGinnis competition. So there's been some folks over at robotics who have been sent this document by the NSF, and then there's some faculty who are involved in this program called the Convergence Accelerator. And it's kind of interesting because it's coming straight from NSF, and they have this like 12-page document explaining, please make a nice video. We really want not only to give you your phase two funding, but we really want to be able to show people who are not technical something that explains what you're doing and show some results in an interesting way. And so they mapped out this whole thing, and I'm sure this is online and you could find this. And there's a lot of things online that sort of echo what I'm going to say here today. And I'm going to pick and choose the things I agree with or maybe things I disagree with. But for people who don't have marketing departments, and if you're a startup or if you're a student group, then you don't necessarily have a lot of these things. The faculty have some resources; they can come to someone like me. But again, I'm one guy in one department, and I kind of can relate to what a lot of you are going to have to do to make this 4-minute video for the McGinnis project. I love to always bring it back to basics. I'd love to not get too, too snooty about filmmaking, video making, making animations. I love doing it. I think it's really fun, but I love to remember that there are books about this that are targeted at fifth graders. And everything I learned at, NYU or whatever was also in this book. So it's about experience. It's about practice, but literally everything I'm going to tell you today, again, is in this book. And I love to give a shout out to this book and this author, because it may look simplistic, but everything's there. And I can also mention some other books like Shot by Shot and some other quick reference books that really just boil it down to the essentials of the raw materials of video and filmmaking. So let's keep that in mind. It's this stuff is out there to be learned, and it's often meant to be more practiced. And like I said, there might even be LinkedIn learning things and resources as well. So the folks who were asked to make this, again, it was a 5-minute video, I think, for NSF, and you have to make a 4-minute video for McGinnis, was like trying to do everything, pitch why this robot technology is important, explain, typical pitch things like the market and those sort of business ideas. But most importantly, they really wanted to meet and understand what each person on the team did. And this group, was working on inexpensive robotic hands and other manipulators. I'll show a little clip from it now because I think it's a good example of some recent work that sets the stage for what I'm going to talk about.
The hand is an incredibly beautiful and complex organ, and it's an organ we take for granted. We use it for work, we use it for play, we use it for caress, fine movement, gross movement, power. When any of those functions are lost, the hand is compromised.
I have a residual limb just below my elbow, about 3 to 4 inches. I use assistive devices in my prosthesis in the operating room to do fine motor techniques and procedures on patients. I am the only nurse anesthetist that has one arm.
That weight puts a lot of pressure here as it wants to fall down.
There's always a challenge. Being able to carry your small child in one hand and carry a grocery bag in another, being able to stabilize a plate in something as simple as cutting my steak. Those things are struggles that I have every day.
Fine motor skills, they still have problems with. Picking up little things, it's almost impossible to do. Durability is another issue. Cables and spectra still break through on the joints. Ligament does not pull the finger closed, ultimately doesn't let the finger open. Tissue of our hand can close that gap when you're pinching something. Products now we have, the best hands on the market, they're rubber, plastic, potentially like a silicone type, but it does not move like our human tissue does.
Another thing is the way the bones in the hand are connected and how important that is to not only hand mobility, but hand strength and stability.
So our solution is a bio-inspired robotic hand that combines softness with strength and all over sensing with dexterity.
Our hand has rigid skeleton inside. When we grasp something, the rigid body, the structure is actually very important. So for the skin, we are using elastic material for now to make the adaptability when there's a contact. We have multiple electrodes inside one finger, 12 electrodes in one finger, so we can sense any contact force within the skin.
And our polymers need to be integrated with that structure so that not only will they do actuation, but the sensing by the fluid will also symbiotically work with our actuation methods. Polymers can be designed with functionality, with adhesive property, color property, electrical property. You'll have that level of dexterity that you need.
But just being able to customize it, no matter what kind of application you have, prosthetics or somewhere in manufacturing or in agriculture, that's, I think, a big opportunity that we have and that we have built over the years with our design pipelines, what we know about these things, how to hold them.
The hand that you might want for a manufacturing process versus a hand you might want in agriculture versus a hand that this individual might need or some other individual might need would be completely different. And so our proprietary software allows us to do this kind of customization. The thing I love most about this project is the passion it inspires in everybody who's become involved.
I think what this team is trying to do is to bridge the gap of things that were not possible 20 years ago, not even 10 years ago.
They're trying to find a way to incorporate sensibility into this hand, and they already have a hand that is functioning, capable of picking up small objects with relatively good dexterity. If we can restore function to these individuals, we do something that has not been accomplished, and I feel as though we are close.
Okay, so that comes in at, was that exactly 5 minutes? Looks like even maybe it was 4 minutes if I'm, yeah, 4 minutes. So that's how much you can cover in 4 minutes. A lot. If it's somewhat scripted, somewhat planned, and edited as efficiently as possible. So thank you for going through that. I hope that you were interested in it, but hopefully you were also seeing it through the lens of the amount of like work, effort, and sort of it checked all the boxes of what was required by that document. It didn't go as specifically into the business details as the McGinnis one would, but you could see where those things would change. There's a lot in there that is worth talking about. The can Can you cover everything in that 4 minutes? No, but you can cover a lot. You know, one of the useful things from that document, and I would preach the same thing, is that this video is not meant to be a 10-minute talk or a 20-minute talk. It's supposed to be the item that wants them leaving more. They want to learn more. They want to then hear the bigger, longer thing, or the judges will, you know, send you to the next phase. So you can put a lot in there, is the point. You need to be thinking about why the solution is compelling. What's the driving need? Who will benefit? That's the market. And to just be as confident as you can be about believing in the pitch, the product, and the service as you can be. So those things really shine through. In the McGinnis, on the McGinnis application, there's a link to this. I want to just echo it. It's worth knowing about. I bet many of you already do, but Guy Kawasaki pretty much boils it down to, you know, the bare essentials. And I think that these 10 slides almost can be then used as a 4-minute outline for a video. All right, so less is more. Planning is important, but I think it's also important to remember you're making a video and you want to visualize ideas as much as you can. PowerPoint slides are great. Depends on how you utilize them. Okay. You want to be able to see the problem, see the customer, see it in action, even if that means an animation where it's not real, but it visualizes. So visualize, visualize, visualize. Anything that you can visualize, reasonably so, do it. This is literally a screenshot from the NSF piece, and this is the standard script that I also teach, where it lets people know who, especially on the team, what we're seeing and what we are hearing. And it's very important to keep those things very clear. You could even argue that inside of what we see could be on-screen text could be put in there as well. So just really nailing down how you use that 4 minutes is important. And people usually skip this phase, and it's and they shouldn't, because they think, well, I'll just edit it. But if you don't have somewhat of a plan, the editing can be really painful. Some people even would take the time to get a sense of what's the most important thing that I'm showing on screen at that point. You don't want your video to be all talking heads. You might have noticed that there was a lot of stuff in that video that was taken from a place like Pexels to help visualize those things. I needed shots of hands. I didn't have all of those shots of hands. Those are royalty-free shots of hands, for example, at the beginning, the hook. They say, please practice. This is so important. If you are doing it to a camera, you should assume the first 1 or 2 times you throw it away because you're getting warmed up. And you want to make sure everybody's on the same page and that you perform consistently so that you all seem, again, unified and on the same page from a tone standpoint, from a pace standpoint. You know, just synchronize those, and again, their performances. You are performing for a camera. I'm performing right now. Okay, it'll be time well spent, and it pays off. Okay, so here, let me show you some examples here of this working in different kind of ways. I think it's important to talk to the camera like you're talking to someone who's friends with you. Think of the person. Don't think of, you know, 1,000 people. Think of one person. And don't be afraid to do it as many times as you need. And we'll talk later about where you can take, you know, the good part of take 1 and the good part of take 3 and put a little, you know, graphic over top of that cut and no one would ever know. And again, consistency is kind of important here. Let me show you what I mean. So sometimes you have people addressing the camera. and they're talking right to the camera. This is very common nowadays in a world of social media. This is not how it has to be done, but this is very common, and people are more comfortable with this now. We're all much more aware of cameras being in our pocket, and this is a faculty, and she's actually on a green screen right now. This was a demo just to show off if I could get a green screen to work with her hair. Truth be told, I wanted to see how well it held up in areas like her hair, because historically green screens kind of fail in those areas.
So in the intent lab, our goal is to develop theoretical frameworks and practical algorithms for ensuring that autonomous AI systems can be safely deployed at scale. One of the things that's really exciting about robotics is that robots can take action in the physical world to influence the environment or other agents of the scene. However, it's precisely this ability that makes robots safety critical.
So she's all about robot safety. This is Andrea Vici over at Robotics. And she spoke to my camera with a prompt. So she was not scripted, but she knew the gist of what she was going to talk about. And since she's obviously very comfortable with the topic, she was able to sort of talk to my camera like she was just talking to me. And sometimes that can come across as more confident and friendly and natural. And of course she wasn't perfect. And of course she didn't flow exactly perfect like this edit. But every time you see her move or change scale, I'm artificially injecting a way to, quote, get away with an edit that continues to grab your attention. You're conscious of the edit, but it doesn't feel like a jump cut. When the person is always in the same place for every one of those cuts, I personally think that that's too jumpy. But again, in this modern age of everybody has a YouTube channel, that's becoming more and more accepted just as a way to convey information. But this was meant to be a step above that, meant to portray her as an expert. Recently, I filmed something. Now, this is not on a green screen, but I find that it looks more like she's on a green screen than the one that you just saw. Let me just show this difference here.
Makes the dream work. I'm Mr. Staszel. How can robots and AI help make teamwork even better across domains such as workforce development and caregiving? I'm Pragati Pravina, a postdoc at CMU with the AI Caring Institute. I lead a project that builds computational user models of older adults from their life stories. These models capture social contexts that affect teamwork, such as values, norms, and relationships, so that AI can better understand and support how we work together.
Gotcha. So she was faced with, I am being told I need to provide a 30-second or so clip of myself explaining my role on this team. Again, sounds similar to maybe the teams that are being put together for the competition. She's reading a laptop teleprompter. She practiced 3 or 4 times. I feel like it's acceptable. And she's going to be edited in with other people who are looking just off camera. So some people might be on this side looking just off camera at the interviewer, and she'll be one of the folks on that side. So stylistically, very, very different. It was a very strict in terms of it could not be any more than 30 seconds. It just we needed to put her in some context of the work that she's doing. And I think that's the main other thing I'd like to say about this. So the composition is fine, and we'll get to that in a minute, and not on a green screen, although it looks like it. And so if you can find a place to do your talking heads that's more relevant to your pitch, then that I think makes it all the more compelling, as opposed to it being, against the wall in your office. Recently filmed Mitch. I'll let him talk here for a second. This is me being risky, letting Mitch talk to my camera and explain a very technical thing without a script. And then the editing on this was very difficult and took more time than I wanted. So I worked with it, but I thought I would share this as another example of real life.
My name is Dr. Mitchell Fogelson. I just recently successfully defended my PhD in the mechanical engineering department, looking at large deployable space structures for artificial gravity. We've invented different types of scissor units, such as the pop-up extending truss structure. This is a novel scissor mechanism that stows flat when stowed
and then pops up into this triangular truss. These structures, when combined hierarchically, allow us to support super high extension ratio space systems for next generation, long duration missions. The work that we were looking at for zero G is understanding how we can leverage new
simulations. So, okay, Mitch did great. Again, maybe the prompts weren't as sharp, the editing was as hard, a little bit less tight than the other. So I wanted to just show sort of the price you pay for not having a script. And he's also talking about something pretty technical. We got there, but I just wanted to share that real world experience here because it's just a cautionary tale. I do think though that one thing you might have seen throughout all those is there's some conscious effort to obey some basic rules of composition. The rule of thirds is a rule that's meant to be broken, but these are examples of compositions that use the off-screen space effectively, and you can decide, I feel like there are different gazes that read differently, and the more you are turned too far, and in my example, she was on the line to get to that teleprompter, or and if the laptop had been above the camera or something like that, you might get different gazes. So I think that it's better to not use the teleprompter if you can, but as you can see, if you have to, there's ways of executing it that's acceptable. All right. So this assumes that you have pitch slides and you want to show them, but it also assumes that we want to really meet the team and really engage in the subject. If I could have one wish, it would be that pitch videos would show the slides as little as possible unless they were very compelling with some kind of compelling information. A video is not the same as giving a talk like I'm doing right now. The tools out there that you may want to get your hands on for maybe making that style of presentation more compelling, OBS being the free one, ScreenFlow being the not free one, but I can give it a shout out as a tool that I use, and I have I've had some good experiences with that. Because we don't want to just look at a tiny picture of you. We want to see you really well. So let's compare here. Here's a clip from a recent, my little talking Brian Staszel is covering up for people in the room, but I think you'll still get the idea here. Zoom doesn't have particularly great audio. It gets very compressed, and you're a person up in the corner here. So we've all seen these before, and they have their pluses and minuses. It's also a particularly interesting example of just how complicated certain slides should be, and this level of complexity probably should not be in most pitch videos, maybe some distilled version of that. I like to show this one, and I've shown it for a few years during the pandemic, whenever conferences had to go online. This was the format that Adobe Max ultimately went with, and I think it's something that's probably made with a tool like OBS, because you can do it live. Maybe Adobe has their version of OBS that I'm not aware of. But what's nice about this, I'll let you hear it.
The impact of social media. All right. Let's start with some golden rules, and these are 6 fundamental principles that are never changing. Sometimes the world of social media seems.
So again, nice, good view of the speaker and enough of the slide to still be able to see it. I like that as a format if you ultimately are going with basically just your slides and your face. And using a tool like OBS helps make that happen. You pick your camera as a source, you pick your slide share, your slide program, or your browser window, or whatever it is, Keynote, PowerPoint as another source, and you literally place them on the screen the way you want, similar to what you saw in the Adobe Max. And I use this for live streaming as well, and it's great. So this is where I try to be real and talk about what I do and what I use, but I also know that I'm lucky to have this big soft light, and I have a nice microphone, and I have a nice camera, and I have a room with carpet that makes the echo less, and I have a curtain that's green. This isn't that fancy of a green screen. It's just a green curtain. So that's, you know, that's something to say. It's not that this setup couldn't be a borrowed camera from ID8, a borrowed light and mic from ID8, and some kind of even colored wall that becomes your chroma key. There's always ways to do it on a budget. These folks' setup are just as valid, especially in one of my primary cameras I use now. I use you know, a nice DSLR, a nice Lumix. I have a nice Canon that's similar to the one that's at ID8. I use a nice Blackmagic camera. They're all great cameras, but you know which one I also use? My iPhone 16 Pro. It's finally gotten to the point where I can shoot stuff for work on that camera and it be often indistinguishable from some of those other nicer cameras. So just be aware. So sometimes it's about rigging out and using your phone or a more recent phone appropriately. In past versions of this talks, I've shown people make pitch videos with iPhone. Gosh, I think it went all the way back to maybe even an iPhone 7, and they looked pretty good. So I don't like to stand up here and be a camera snob. I'd rather you get the best video you can out of the camera you have access to. And often that just has to do with lighting and the scene, where sometimes it's where you are. In this case, I'm working with one of the students and they're in the lab. And this is about as gritty and as real as it gets, but he's talking about the tech that he's built into this little running robot. And I'll play a little bit of this now. And these links all work if you're watching this online.
Navigate through confined spaces. Our robot can safely navigate through super confined spaces like offices, narrow corridors. It can go through a lot of both static and dynamic obstacles.
But the question we want to answer is, can we, maintain this agility again simultaneously and build a system that is safe, that people can trust? It is fully behind the person, autonomous and onboard. All the computation, all the sensing, all the decision making are fully onboard.
We add a back camera in front of it, and this is directly connected to the mini PC on board. And this RNN is just a module that computes all the sensing and all the decision making. And then this mini PC will transfer all the control signals into the robot.
Okay. So very, very cool stuff they got this robot to do. Stuff this robot really couldn't do until they started really ripping it apart and playing with it. But I like to show this because sure, green screens are fine. And they offer convenience and they offer consistency. Talking heads, they have a purpose, but getting him into the lab and having him where he actually worked made that part of the video and much of the video much more compelling to me. And I think other people who want to see what it's like where he works and what he does. So I want to encourage you to get out of this room and maybe into other places, but that comes with a cost. You have to make sure it's not too loud. You have to make sure you have a good microphone that's attached to your subject. And, again, I'm going to call out ID8 lending desk at the end here, and there's a link to it. And I think everybody should take advantage of it. Those shots of the hand in my clip are from a website called Pexels, Pexels. I'm sure it's one of many sites out there for this kind of content, but I can't give them enough shouts out because they really have a lot of great stuff. If you're visualizing your problem, sometimes you need to sort of think in a more abstract way, instead of literally showing very specifically your market or your target. But you may find some things that are reminiscent or in the neighborhood emotionally that you could use to put people more in the world of your video as opposed to keeping them only sort of in pitch mode. Yeah, like if people are doing a pitch on solar energy, I just did a quick another clean energy. I just did a quick search there's just so much high quality material that you're allowed to use for free. You're supposed to just give a shout out to the creator of it in your card. And if you watch any of my videos that I've been doing for the last several years here for robotics, they'll often have one or two of these in there, and you just give them a credit. I will say also, Free Music Archive is another source for really quality music, and I like to support musicians who allow that music to be in videos, especially education videos and nonprofit videos. and you can find that there. That's not on Pexels, that's on something called Free Music Archive, and you have to sort of look through it. It's a little bit harder to find things, but it's there. All right. So this was the LOL in the document that I knew would be in there, and I didn't have to look hard. They're like, okay, science team or business team, go in and list somebody. Maybe there's somebody at your university who would help you. And it says most universities have media departments, right? And university film schools are full of talented people who would love to add a prestigious project like yours to their resume. If you find these people, great. Maybe you're friends with them. Maybe there is a mutual benefit that you can get. So I don't want to totally say this is silly, but I do think sometimes it's a little unrealistic because oftentimes those people are busy with their own requirements and their own demands and projects and things. But if you find somebody who's really interested in what you're doing and they do see it as an opportunity to make a portfolio piece, great. A lot of us are going to have to tap into what the school offers, not in terms of people, but in terms of equipment. And I believe this QR code will drop you in on the landing page for Ideate. I checked it out again here this morning, and I added the Sony FX3, which is a very nice camera. They have some Canon cameras comparable to the one I use that you saw in some of the material, and the Sony FX3 is another professional level camera that you can get access to with your CMU ID. The tripods, the lighting, the microphone. You might need to be teched on how you plug the microphone into the camera, or if you plug the microphone into a separate audio recorder. And I'm sure the people there have the time or the resource to make sure you understand how to use the equipment that you get. And they've really stepped it up, and I really am so proud to see, again, 3 or 4 really nice cameras that are 2 of them in particular are very new. That's hopefully what you use to gather your own video clips. So a lot of you probably have heard the term B-roll. This is like the video you cut to when your speaker needed to have an edit, your take 1 to take 2 or take 3, you need to put some video over top of that transition. You heard probably a lot of that audio being diced up on Mitch, and I'm cutting to his technology as much as I can to hide my edits, but so you need to be thinking about a B-roll that's relevant. You don't want it to feel irrelevant. You want to be thinking about making sure that the camera is nice and steady. Think about how you're framing it. Should the camera be static? Most of the time it actually should be. If the camera moves, be very cautious and careful on how you move it. Usually you want to just move it in a nice and slow, very deliberate way. There are digital ways to do virtual zooms where you literally scale the material or scale it up or down, and maybe that gives you more control later, but that assumes you have somebody who's really into the editing part of this. I want to talk about audio. Audio is what matters the most. If your audio sounds bad, people will tune out. You need an audio strategy. You want to record people in a room where there's not too much echo. Let me see, how many things are wrong with this room? Thank goodness these are up. Without those, this would be the worst room ever to record an interview. And I bet many people have had to do it in here. And sometimes you'll see people set up a light stand and they'll put literally a blanket on it, and that's called a sound blanket. Maybe they will literally bring a rug and lay a rug down. Depends on the budget, but you need things to suck up those echoes. It's nice to record good audio of your important speakers as good as you can. You can always fix it in post, they say, but the more steps you can do to get the microphone close. Can you use a wireless mic that you have right on there? I think you saw the wireless mic on some of the people who have spoken. Sometimes I have a mic off screen. Sometimes I have it right here. Sometimes you have a hidden recorder that just happens to be out of the shot, and you take the audio from that. A Zoom recorder, not to be confused with the conferencing software. There's a company that makes really nice little audio recorders, and my phone does a great job of that now too. So if it sounds bad, people will tune out. Don't use the audio from that Canon camera or even that Sony camera. If that Sony camera is 10 feet away from your speaker, it'll probably still sound bad. It's going to give you a great image, but you might want to use that audio, that poor audio, to have it match up with your good audio. There's, for example, this is built into most good video editors. There's a way to have your good audio automatically synchronize using the poor audio. And then the software is smart enough to turn off the poor audio. There's some other cool tricks out there. This is one that I've been utilizing in the recent year. Maybe it's been around longer than that. I wanted to jump out and actually play this, but maybe I think you can imagine maybe I can do it at the end if anybody's really interested. But basically, if you have, the speaker, you have the lav mic on, and unfortunately the gain on that mic was turned down too low. So you recorded it, but it's really soft. Or the mic was further away from the speaker than you thought. Sometimes you can even take pretty good audio and make it sound even better. So this is a tool that you get with an Adobe license. I'm lucky enough to have that as part of my role here. So maybe not everybody has this. I think you do if you go to the computer labs. You need to sign in with your CMU Andrew ID. And if you go to the Adobe podcast page, they consider it the online component to Creative Cloud. And it's pretty cool. Like, you upload your audio, you can hear it in its original form. And I have found that I can, depending on the source, turn this down to 70 or 80 and let a little bit more of that background come through so it feels more natural. And if you turn it to this 90-10 setting, the software is basically trying to make it sound like that person was speaking into a mic like this, which is podcast quality. That's the proximity effect. You can hear everything, all the bass, all the treble. But in video world, we don't usually sound that good. And when we do, it looks really weird. So be careful about that. If your audio sounds too good, the uncanny valley kicks in and we kind of realize, like, what's going on with that audio? So just be aware. Let's talk about editing. So the thing you have access to in the computer labs here is Adobe Premiere. It's come a long way. You could argue it might be the most popular and the best. There's others out there. I trained on Final Cut Pro in the last, going on 15, 20 years. And I've just become so comfortable with it that I don't think about the software anymore. I'm thinking about my visual story. So if you don't have one that you've used a lot, then just use the one that you can use for free. Both of these are great, and they're both in the computer lab. Like I mentioned, I use this other tool called ScreenFlow, but truth be told, that's because whenever I record a lesson for my class, it's sort of like OBS, but even easier to use and even more tailored to teaching software. So if I'm teaching something in Adobe After Effects, ScreenFlow really shines. It shows the software, it shows me, it captures all my keystrokes. So if you ever wonder how people do those online tutorials where it's showing you the keys they're pressing and other cool stuff, ScreenFlow is awesome, and it's from a company called Telestream. I want to give a shout out to this video, which I saw a couple weeks ago. This is from the Marcus Brownlee channel, the very popular YouTube tech blog, tech channel. Great content, very famous. They've decided to sort of spin off a little studio YouTube page where they talk about how they make their work. And this one really did a nice job of stepping through shooting, editing, motion graphics, and sound design. And if you are lucky enough to have 4 people on your team, a video production team, and each person does one of those roles in addition to the person who's talking to the camera, then that's optimal. A team of 4 or 5 people is like your company one day should have 3 or 4 people to really fire on all cylinders and produce quality content. But she does a great job of explaining the editing process, and I can't recommend it enough. So check out this link. And there's the quick version is she shows a version where she doesn't have enough video to work with, and she shows a version where she has too much video to work with. So I don't know what the problem will be for the McGinnis project. My guess is you have too little to work with, and that part might be more relevant. This is a timeline for the project that I showed you a few minutes ago, and that's a lot of edits. That's a lot of choices. You know, this track is the B-roll that's covering up the talking head track down here. And the rhythm of what they're saying in conjunction to the rhythm of what I'm showing is a very important rhythm, because it involves how the brain is and how your viewer is absorbing the information, how you are allowing them to get that information on different modes. Do they have time to read what you put up while the person was saying something? Maybe, maybe not. Be aware of that. When Nancy mentioned the 4 most important things that their product does, we went that extra step and put that text on the screen. That might make it more memorable than if she had just said it. Decisions like that. But the real thing I'm showing off here is just how complicated it can get with B-roll, and then also videos provided from the team. In this case, you know, this person had a prototype of the sensors built into the 3D printed finger, and they had this nice screenshot of the electrical signals, and video brought that together to make that more sense and make more sense. When he would give a talk, you know, he would show one and then show the other, and it was harder to put the two together. Another timeline, more straight on, just to give you sort of the full scope of things. This is a team who put together a robot to kill lanternflies. Same kind of thing. 4 people on the team. They have a pitch. They have a prototype that's partially done, and they're explaining what the prototype does. I show this again just to respect what you can do in 4 minutes. And you can watch this one online too. If you Google CMU lanternflies, I'm sure it'll come right up. I don't think there's too many of those. And it's kind of neat to see the timeline, just to get a sense of, we're never ever looking at anything for much, or hearing anything for much longer than 10, 15 seconds. Oftentimes it's in 6 to 9 second chunks. I really want to give a shout out this year to motion graphics. This is something that I haven't talked about too much, but it is the class that I teach here, which is Intro to Multimedia Design. I'm teaching it this fall. I've been teaching it every fall for years now. If any of you are really interested in some of the kind of stuff I'm about to show here on the next slide, then I want you to be aware of this. I think that this is like the missing piece between a lot of videos, where we're given data, we're given information, we have talking heads, but sometimes you can use an animation tool to visualize data, visualize the problem, and more importantly, visualize the solution. And these kinds of animations can do a lot of heavy lifting, talking about the convergence of 2 markets, showing off why this competitor's overheats, why a lot of what is taught in the class is based on TED Ed video and Vox style explainers, which have sort of come to define the genre. There's a lot of kind of explainers out there, but I'm talking more about the 2D ones that usually are somewhat, they could be journalistic in nature, or they could be, that 5-minute sweet spot of trying to really teach something complicated. That's all I have, and I wanted to take the rest of the time for questions, or any other thoughts, or any specific things that you want to talk about in terms of how this all applies to what you're trying to pitch. And I'll stop there. Thank you. I don't know if it's good to leave that up there or not, if that's just distracting. Question, yes. On the timelines?
Yeah, that was like
This is probably 2 4-hour sessions for me with 20 years of experience. I think there's a lot of people who could do that, but it might take, say, 2 8-hour sessions. The other thing that I learned from some people is shoot to edit. Sometimes if you have a plan, you already are starting to edit it in your mind. So you know, okay, during that part, I'll show that. During that part, I'll show that. And sometimes those things come through and sometimes not. But yeah, this is the reality of what I do a lot of the time on the higher quality ones. And if you're lucky enough, like, so like I went out and filmed that robot, but then one of the scientists gives me a screenshot of a visualization, you know? So like, again, this is like my world in robotics, but the one that was there earlier, like the B-roll might be those clips from Pexels and stuff. But yeah, so they give a sense of time. I feel like, you know, it's if I interview somebody like Andrea for half an hour and I take that 20 minutes of video that I got, and then I spend about 4 hours editing it a first pass to get it down to the sound bites, and then another 4 hours to get it really refined. That's typical. And very ballpark. Obviously, it could be plus or minus, you know, question.
So
And tell me what I need to put up here, if anything.
Slides that have diagrams are probably like too technical for a video. And then
Yeah, well, that was someone's Zoom talk. I was kind of cheating. That was an RI seminar.
so I'm just maybe a good use would be a good use of slides and the video.
Right. Like I think you saw what I went to on the on, you know, like I think this is like the upper bound of like six points. If you read the pitch video link to the Kawasaki thing, like he's like use 30-point font and have like 3 words on every slide. So I think people can handle a little bit more than what he's saying, but I think his point is very well very true. Like do not overwhelm people. And it's funny. Yeah, to show an RI seminar is not fair because they're trying to teach something so technical. They're trying to show like 2 years worth of work in 45 minutes. This guy's talking about 6 golden rules, right? But I think what I sometimes land on is, and I'll jump to it, I think here, is, and that's why I chose it as the poster slide. Like sometimes you really need to boil it down.
So really just
Yeah, like I think that when you cut to your slide and you talk about your market, you have to be very conscious of how much information are they really going to absorb. So it should be, that's where the Kawasaki slides kick in, like boiled down to the 3 most important things. And that's also why, of course, you can talk about stuff, but don't put everything up on the screen you're talking about. Yeah, and I could skim around in here. Question, yes.
So about me, I do a lot of film stuff. Like I am a filmmaker. This is a lot of stuff I do, but I wanted to get your insight. I've done a lot of commercials before, like paid commercials too, but I've been working on like a startup that's like a software product for helping like AI consulting. And so it's kind of like out of my range of what I usually do because I do interviews, I do like we see the product in motion. But when it's like a software product, I feel like there's kind of a disconnect with that. Like and I was wondering like how you would approach doing that. And like you obviously show the product, you show what it looks like, but then it's like where do you build from there? Do you like bring consultants in to see like how they like the product? Or like what would you do?
I always think of drug ads when I think of that problem, where you humanize it, you make people feel a certain way. You know, yeah, because like what's an example of like a software you're talking about? Like if I was going to make an ad for the new YouTube algorithm, I am showing happy people, you know, or there might be a layer beyond that that's more intelligent. Like can you show somebody in saving time? Can you show, like it becomes more about the benefit. But you're right, AI, that's why people come running to me for robot video. Because people hear AI is invisible. But if I can show a robot, okay, that's AI, right? So like sometimes you have to cheat and visualize it with something. But be aware of like you know, using stock that just feels so stock, right? And I think that's kind of what happens. Like sometimes you use stuff that feels like it doesn't belong, or it feels like that tell me more about the disconnect.
Well, it's just like I made like an ad for like an AI tech product, but I shot everything. It was kind of like a film, and it showed like how like people were lives were like kind of like improving with it. It was like this goal setting type thing, like AI would help you with that. It just felt disconnected from like the product.
Yeah, so like in a past life, one of the things I taught using Adobe After Effects was sort of proving if the app was viable. So sometimes the motion graphics can really save you, where you portray the graphics of the software and you show off how it's compelling and colorful and easy to use. But less is more. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So, does CNU offer more than just like the idea, like routine with the equipment, like I'm a PhD student in robotics institute.
Okay, great. Hi.
We have robots, right? So
Yes.
I would kind of want to like feel my possibility stuff.
Yes.
And I wonder if like.
Well, you have the very lucky situation of being able to bug me, and maybe I can get you video, and then we make a deal where, okay, if I can use this clip to make the university look good, you can also have it and use it for whatever you need. Right. So I can't do that for every department, but I have done it for HCI, done it for robotics. I can get away with anybody in school computer science probably, as long as my schedule allows. But it's we're just lucky that my role even exists. Like back in the day when robots were all broken, and it was very, like I'm talking like 1984, like they're learning how to build robots and they're really slow. So the video was critical to explain what it would do if the computer was strong enough or if the computer was fast enough. And luckily my role still exists. It was like that even in 2002 when I started. Yeah. Please. As long as we are done by 1:38.
When you all have drones, how can the business school borrow you?
What I should do is just talk to people here about creating a me, basically, like find a way to how can they create a role that does a similar thing, or how can there be an ID8 that lives within Tepper? For all I know, there is. Like I am only familiar with my equipment and what ID8 does. If there is some other resource that other departments have, ask questions and find out. Maybe that exists. And the third question.
Is, have you seen or played around with like AI tools with editing or auto captioning?
Yes. So that's something that's left out of here. Auto captioning for sure. Really, really a wonderful time saver. Like, so I collaborate with a social media person. Her name is Mallory Lindahl. And if I shoot some video of Mitch and he's using that to promote his work, and that's that 16:9, I need a way to quickly subtitle that in a clever way. So like all of the subtitles you see on social media, there's some AI kicking in to help speed that up. The one that I've used personally is called Captionator. But there's many of them. Captionator is a one you can buy for Final Cut Pro, and Adobe has pretty good built-in auto captioning, but it doesn't do some of the more colorful stuff. You have to buy a plugin there too. So it's one of those things too, where you could even argue that, I'll just say, like, I put up a video on YouTube that had the subtitles built in, the YouTube style subtitles that you can turn off and on. And that video got 2,000 views. I took half of that video in portrait and put the cool subtitles on, and it got 16,000 views on YouTube Shorts. So as much as I would love to pretend that everybody likes to watch videos on a TV, they're watching a lot of my content when they're on the bus, on their phone, or even wherever they are. And so I assume pitch videos for this project are still a YouTube link, but we'll see. Maybe you'll get a YouTube short link as the world evolves and changes around us, right? And as for drones, I do not have one, but I have been trained in the Las Vegas desert to play with them. It's just that flying them around campus involves all kinds of paperwork and FAA stuff. And I work with some people who fly some stuff down at secondary. If you're flying a drone, you're probably doing something illegal, but if you get away with it, you didn't hear that from me. Thank you. Any other questions? Thoughts, feelings? If anybody ever wants to reach out to me, I am Brian Staszel over at the Robotics Institute. And, oh yeah, sorry, yes.
So you talked about a couple of different ways that you approach people through presenting information in like a virtual basis. I find that sometimes I'll take a bunch of takes and I almost sound robotic or too reversed, like the amount that I sound natural. Away from it. Do you have any advice?
That's a great question. So people on Zoom, if you're in here, like basically, how can you be more natural to the camera, especially after you've done it 5 times? So they call that like wilting when you perform and you wilt. So sometimes it's just good to like stop doing it for 20 minutes and then do it again. I think the best advice is pretending you're talking to one person, like I said, or literally talk to one person. So when I interview these people, I try to have them, I trick them as much as I can, and I tell them I'm going to do this, and they're on board. Talk to me, and I'm hovering near the camera as best I can, and I'm trying to engage with them with eye contact. I'm trying to engage with them like I'm having a conversation, and it helps calm them down, and it helps them to stop being so stilted. But if you have some very like bullet point type stuff that you just need to say, then I would question, do you need to say it? Can you show the bullet and then say a very succinct version? So like that's another way to have your cake and eat it too. Because you're right, if you sound too robotic, then it's just like, okay, that's weird. But that's very common. I think that I would say do it 3 times and then take a break and literally talk to somebody with you, probably someone on your team you're comfortable with. What were you trying to pitch? Sometimes it's just something that's really hard to talk about. What were you talking about?
Oh, it's I mean, for anything, I feel like I can show much more enthusiasm person.
Yes.
And making those eye contact with people. So I think it's helpful that see someone behind that camera.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about.
I think getting out of your desk.
Yeah.
Like when I'm at my desk and I make a video, I'm in a certain mode where I can just tell. But like I'll take people in that room and make them stand and do it. I'll take them to the lab and make them stand at the edge of a table. So they have something to ground them. So it could just be as simple as changing the environment. Yeah, but it's hard. Yeah. And I know Nancy did this 5 times. Are we good then? Again, reach out. If you my email is just my last name at Andrew. I should have it up there, Staszel at Andrew. And if I can be of any help or point you to any resources, or maybe